All right, hello again, everyone. It is Wednesday, August 13th, and I know I just did this video on the MPAD, but there's a few too many things I missed, and so I need to do the video again. I am going to streamline some things this time around to help with this, though, so this should be a little quicker than last time. Oh, let me spit out my gum, because I don't want people getting angry at me because I'm chewing gum in the video. So, all right. Now that we've taken care of that, so on our system, we have this program NoMachine that talks to the MPAD PC. And you can see here, whoops, sorry, let me minimize all this stuff. There we go. We have this program called NoMachine, which talks to the MPAD PC, so we can access this directly through the Microscope PC without having to have a separate monitor in the control room. So you're going to find your MPAD GUI here, and we're going to double click. Okay, and so if you already created a project folder, you can open it again and add data to it, but let's assume that that isn't the case, so we're going to click New, and then we need to give it a name. So I'm going to call this, sorry, let me switch chairs here. Make sure I'm at a better height here to use the keyboard with my bad arm. YouTube tutorial 250813. Okay. Then you get the option here to go online, which we want to do. Okay, and so now we need to power on the MPAD. Right, and now we have to wait for the cooling to reach the set point, which is -5 Celsius. So some things to mention here. So the design of each column is a little bit different, but on this themis, the way the column is designed is that the MPAD actually inserts above the HADF detector. So if we actually also above the viewing screen, right? So if we actually look at a diagram, it's going to make me restart Velox to show this. That's fine. We got time here. There's always success to be learned in failures. Okay, so here's our, let me unblank the beam. So here's our diagram, right? So we have the blue screen, or the main screen, if you will. Then we have the HADF detector, and then it's not shown in here, but the MPAD is above the HADF detector. So when the MPAD is inserted, you're not getting any signal to the HADF detector, okay? So I can actually prove this to you right now. Let me go ahead here. I'm just going to bump down the camera length a few clicks so we can see a little bit more. So you can see the rim of the HADF detector here. And if I come back to MPAD inserted, you can see now it's blocked off. So now the way this column is designed is that the MPAD is at a different plane than the HADF. So there's no issue of or potential issue with collision. I've heard on some older systems this is something that you have to be careful with. That you can actually, If the HADF is inserted and you insert the MPAD, you will destroy one or both of those. Okay, so we don't have that problem on this microscope, but just something to kind of keep aware of. Let me go ahead and, all right, so we're already getting close here. Let me take this out. All right, and let's real quickly talk about the beam settings. So I already have the microscope aligned. I'm not going to go through that just to kind of streamline this, but basically what I've done here is I'm in STEM mode and I went to free control and I activated microprobe. So we're in microprobe STEM. I also have in right now the smallest C2 aperture, and then I further reduce my default semi-angle of convergence in the flap out here using multifunction Y. So this is the smallest value of your semi-angle of convergence that is possible on this system in STEM microprobe mode, and presumably, any mode for that matter. If we wanted to get a value smaller than this, we would have to get a smaller C2 aperture. And I do believe that you can get them smaller than 50. But on this system, that's what we have. A word about this number here for the semi-angle of convergence in microprobe mode. My experience is that when I actually measure this, it's actually about twice as big as this. Okay, so the way to actually measure this is if your SATA camera is calibrated, make your camera length really large, and then project the direct disk onto it, and then just measure it. Okay, that's the easiest way to do it. Again, you want to use like a high enough camera length for that. So, and how are we doing here? So we're almost here at the set point here. So I think I've actually covered doing that in previous videos, so I'm not going to go through that again. But my experience is that this is actually closer to about 1 millirad than half a millirad. Okay. So generally speaking, we're going to be using microprobe STEM for doing a 4D STEM experiment. If we're doing things like phase analysis, texture analysis, strain analysis, things where we need to see good separation of the spots in the DP. Okay, so the smaller we make that semi-angle of convergence, the more separation we're going to have. And generally in nanoprobe mode, all other factors being the same, you can get semi-angles of convergence that are about 5 times as large as what you can get in microprobe mode. So generally speaking, the only time you probably are using nanoprobe for doing a 4D STEM experiment with the MPAD is if you're doing something at atomic resolution, and that is certainly something you can do. That is one of the applications. It's not just doing micro, nanoscale, texture, crystallographic analysis, phase analysis, strain map. That's not the only thing you can do. You can actually, there is application at atomic resolution as well. Okay. But what I'm going to show you today is we're going to use STEM microprobe mode with the smallest semi-angle of convergence. Okay, so, and I already have, through the miracle of television, I already have the sample at the right height and the probe already focused on it, so we're already good to go. So we can actually, just very briefly here, I'll turn on the HADF detector, so you can see everything looks good. Now our semi-angle of convergence is really small right now, so your resolution is not going to be very good in this situation. So actually, if we wanted to estimate this, so if we come over here, our probe semi-angle is 1 millirad, and our probe current, I believe it's about, we'll call it 22 millirad, or 22 picoamps. Okay, so it's saying our probe size is about 1.5 nanometers. Okay, so keep that in mind, right, when you're doing this. So that's kind of what we're working with here. Let me uncheck this because we don't need this to auto update. But this is a quick way to estimate your probe size. Okay. So we're certainly not doing anything at atomic resolution, with this with these settings. Okay. All right. So I have Microscope has control now, but what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to stop the scan and then blank the beam, and then we're going to go back to no machine and we're going to insert the MPAD, and now we have the beam blanked, so there's nothing getting to the MPAD, and we're cooled off properly, and this will be green when it's cooled properly. And we need to take a background now. So where you have take background here, you want this to be at a fairly high number. So the exposure time with the MPAD, 1 millisecond is the smallest you can go. And generally speaking, you want to use that because you're going to be able to scan quicker and you're less susceptible to drift and other instabilities. So yes, you probably want to use 1 millisecond here, and then we want to use a sufficiently high number here for the background so we get good statistical averaging. So you can click take background. I do believe that if you don't have the MPAD inserted, when you tell it to take background, it will bark at you. So just something to keep in mind. Okay. So now that we have the background, we can unblank the beam. Okay, so find wherever your beam blank is and unblank the beam. And, sorry, let me go ahead and center the beam here. And now we can go ahead and turn on the video here to see the DP on the MPAD. And there we go. Okay, so the cross here is useful because this defines the center. The scale bars don't really have any meaning. You have to do these calibrations yourself, so you can leave it checked or unchecked. I'm just going to uncheck it to kind of, clear this up a little. But I am going to actually, let me see here. Okay, I'm going to increase my camera length back up to 720. Because I know that's going to be safer for what I want to do. So there's a video I did about making sure you don't oversaturate the MPAD. So I actually know that for this beam geometry, 1 millirad, and this current, that we're going to be fine. Okay, so now if this is already centered really well, if this is not centered, you want to find diffraction alignments, and then you can go ahead and center it accordingly. Okay, but you want your direct disk centered as well as possible. As I mentioned previously, there is one thing you want to be cognizant of. So actually, let me. I'm going to start the scan in Velox, even though we're not going to see it. But let me go ahead and start it. Okay, so you can see it scanning now. So one thing that you want to be cognizant of here is what's called the D-scan artifact. And this is really only an issue at lower magnifications. At like atomic res, this is by and large irrelevant. But if we're doing something like nanoscale to microscale, this can be something we have to worry about. So like you can see, the indicated mag is really high, but so this really isn't an issue. But as I decrease the magnification, watch the direct disk there. Okay, so hopefully you can see that, like it's moving a little bit as it's scanning. So that's the D-scan artifact, and that's a consequence of the fact that we don't quite have the beam tilt pivot points, beam shift pivot points balanced perfectly. There is an alignment you can do for that in microprobe STEM. I find that even after I do that this still is not, corrected anyway. But you can see, right, as I decrease it, right, so you can see it gets worse, right, as the mag goes down. So as the mag goes up, this effect is less. It's still there at 115K indicated, but not terribly bad. Yeah, and then at 225 indicated, it's very, very slight. And then at 320K indicated, it's not very evident at all. As far as the field of view, because when we actually collect the data set here, we're not going to get a scale bar. So what you need to do with this is actually, let me take the MPAD out. Okay, so your field of view here, you have to keep in mind when we're imaging full frame here in Velox at this indicated mag, whatever this is. Okay, so this is saying that our field of view is 277 nanometers. Okay, so we're going to need that for when we need to calibrate the field of view with the MPAD scan. Okay, but I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and I'm going to insert the MPAD. Okay. And so, again, just briefly back to the D-scan artifact. So if you check this D-scan here, there are direct alignments you can use to align this in theory or in principle. The problem is we've had a lot of issues with this not working properly, or being able to actually correct this well. This is something that we've kind of had a lot of headaches with on this system. I don't know if on some other systems it's not quite as much of a problem, but I'm not going to go over that because again, I have trouble getting it to work anyway. But there are direct alignments you can do to in principle correct the D-scan artifact. Okay, again at atomic resolution in like nanoprobe mode, it's going to be completely irrelevant anyway. Okay, so another thing I'd like to point out here, with the display here in the MPAD, so you can do this on linear or you can do it on, well, let's leave it on linear. So then you can make adjustments here with the scaling. You can see though that this is really, because of the high dynamic range of the DP, like linear mode doesn't really work very well. So the better thing, in my opinion, is to switch to log. And then you can adjust this, yep, just like that. It's a little too much. So the histogram, someone asked about if this can be useful for determining saturation, and really it doesn't help much in my opinion. You have to rely more on that. Like you can see I'm changing this, it's not doing anything to the histogram. You have to rely a little bit more on just knowing your semi-angle of convergence and your probe current for that. Okay, and this is again what we're seeing here as far as the histogram. So now when we actually export the patterns, they're not going to look like this. Okay, so this is just a digital enhancement that we're seeing now. Okay, but if you take a look at the pattern here, what I want you to see, because right now we're not scanning the beam at all, but if you look at the pattern here, let me take a print screen really quick. Okay, so there's our diffraction pattern right now, and I'm going to put the screen, or put the MPAD in, or out, I should say, my bad. Okay, and let's take out the HADF because that's in the way. So we'll take that out. And hopefully we can, okay, so what I wanted you to see here, and hopefully this is easy to see. If you look at the DP here, okay, if you look at the DP, now I know this is kind of grainy, but the DP is actually flipped upside down in the MPAD compared to what you see on the FluCamp. Okay, I know that's kind of weird and counterintuitive, but I swear to you that's exactly what's happening. Okay, this is easier to see with like a single crystal, but obviously I don't have a single crystal here. But you can see very clearly. Actually, let me see if I move the beam around. I can maybe find a better spot. Okay, that should be a little more obvious. Let me put the MPAD in again. Okay, do you see the difference between what we had? Let me do a screen snip here. Okay, but yeah, and you should be able to see it now. Okay, so yes, this is flipped upside down. Okay, across this line in the middle. Okay, and yes, that is a known quirk with the MPAD. Okay, so it's actually doing this when it reads the patterns. Okay, so something to keep in mind. If you're trying to establish the DP relationship with the image, you actually need to flip the DPs upside down. Okay, not rotate, mind you, flip. Okay, you need to flip upside down in order to get the proper orientation with the actual sample itself. Okay, so that's something important that I didn't point out when I did this yesterday. All right, let's put the MPAD back in finally, and we'll go ahead and give control to the MPAD now, and so over here where we click search, so there's two settings here. There's search and acquire. And these are actually, you can set these to be whatever you want. Whichever one of these you have activated, you could use to do your final acquisition. Generally speaking, though, we use search and we use the full frame at a low resolution. So what you're seeing here, so the scan size, right? This is the full frame. This is the 1.0. You can change this, but I mean, really, it's most intuitive. Just leave this on 1. And so this is the scan resolution, so it's a square. Okay, so this is the same field of view that we were getting in Velox. This is the center position of the scan. So this would be, dead center, right? You can adjust this. It's kind of weird if you do, but you can see what happened, right? So it actually shifted a little bit to the left. Okay, so I mean this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's showing that the scan area is now not centered. So anyway, the best thing here is just I would leave this centered. Whoops. Make sure you hit enter with each of these. There we go. And then down here you have different reconstruction settings. So right now the reconstruction mode is STEM 1, so it's going to use this virtual detector to reconstruct the STEM image that we see here. Okay, so if you click apply, you see it superimposed on the MPAD image or the DP image. Okay, so if we go ahead and click focus on, so there we're getting our reconstructed image. So you can focus and move around with the MPAD, but the scanning is so slow because it's using millisecond times. So it's if you have to do that, it's usually better to go back to Velox and do that rather than try to do it using the MPAD. It's just much more cumbersome, if you will, and slower. Okay. Okay. So anyways, that's the search mode. So you can use this to, of course, determine the area that you want to scan. I would center that rather than try to move the area here. I would just center it and then make adjustments from there. If we go to let's see here, can we switch to acquire? Yes. Okay. So right now it's using the search settings. Let's go ahead and click focus off here. It's going to stop the scan. And let me blank the beam so I have a shortcut. I'm just using my R2 button. So acquire mode. Okay, so again, you can do your final acquisition using whichever settings you have. So if you have search selected, it will do your final acquisition with search, which is when we hit take here. Or if you have acquire, it will use those settings when we hit take. So it's purely arbitrary. Generally speaking, though, you probably want to use higher pixel density when you're doing acquire. So right now, this is going to do, again, the full area at 256 by 256 resolution. Okay. You can go as high as 512 by 512. Okay. But again, if you change this number, you have to make sure to hit in enter each time, or else it turns red. Now you can see this actually turned it into a rectangle, okay? And then if I wanted to, right, I could shift this up so it's only scanning the top half as opposed to the middle, okay? Or I could go down further, right, and now it's scanning the bottom half, okay? So again, this is 0.75 Y relative to the upper left corner here, okay? So you can use that. It's, you know, it usually makes, like, if you're scanning the full frame from left to right, then you could adjust Y here like this. Sorry, that should be 0.5. But let's try, now you can also do the same thing vertically. Okay, so if we wanted to do, say, we could do the same thing, right? And then if we wanted to adjust this, we could scan just the left, or we could scan just the right. And again, that's the middle. So, I mean, you have a lot of flexibility here with how you do this, okay? With your final area that you take the data from. Again, I would make sure it's, you know, I would make sure it's centered. Easiest thing to do is just leave it centered and keep these at 0.5 and 0.5 because it's just a little bit more intuitive. But you have plenty of flexibility here. And again, you can go all the way up to 512. So if we go to 512 here, that's now the full frame, okay? So just for simplicity's sake, why don't we just, I'll do 256 by 128, and right, you can see whichever one of these is the larger, it's going to like expand the full frame, okay? So if I go 128, it's going to go full now, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. Let me go 256 like that. You do have control over this virtual detector, so you can actually move this around here. You can change the size of the inner and the outer ring. You can just hit center to put it back to the center, and then you can change this. You do also have, so this is an annular detector. If you wanted to do bright field, you could do bright field, right, just like that. And then you don't have an inner, so you can actually manually change this number too, right? So this is in terms of pixels, right? Because our DP is 128 by 128. So you can see, right? So that's 30. So that would be right about the radius is about half of the half width of the DP, if you will. Let's see if we do dark field. Okay, so this actually, it goes all the way to the edge now. So your outer radius, actually there isn't one, so to speak. It goes all the way to the corners, and then you just have an inner angle here that you can adjust. Will it let me modify this anymore? No? Interesting. Okay, not sure what that's all about. Can I move this around? I can. Hit apply. Oh, it's interesting. I didn't know it wouldn't do that. So that's what it's calling dark field as opposed to annular. Okay, so you can see that's a 1 pixel radius now, right? But yeah, you can make this really skinny. If you're trying to like isolate a specific D-spacing, right, you can do that here. If you know the radius that this corresponds to in your DP. So actually, why don't we, just for fun here, I'm going to, okay, unblank the beam and do video on. We move the sample here so we can kind of see a little bit more. Okay, so if we do apply, okay, so I'm going to move. Go down even more. Okay, and then I'm going to bring that down. Go 27. Okay, so basically I'm isolating this radius right here, as you can see. And I think that's going to be the 111 reflection, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll go ahead and use that for our reconstructed image. So let's go ahead and let's go back to search and click focus on, and let's see how this looks here. If we hit apply, yeah, so that's exactly what that is. So now this is like a texture tool, right? So we can see grains that are have strong 111 reflection here. So it's pretty neat. So you can isolate despacings with this, again, provided that they're not too tightly overlapping per se. All right, neat. And again, so when we actually take the final image, it will give us these reconstructed STEM images, as well as a DPC calculation as well. So let's see, we talked about the flip upside down, or the flip upside down, or the flip upside down of the DP. So then, as far as let me stop here. You have to click focus off here. Okay, so now you do also, let me do video on. You do also have the option here. Oh, sorry, I have to do this off here. Apparently, you can't have it on while you do this. You do have the option to just take a series. So basically, whatever your probe is doing, probe is stationary. You can just take 1,000 DPs in quick succession right after each other, each one 1 millisecond exposure. It doesn't do any kind of mapping, obviously, right? And the beam's not being scanned right now. So this is what I did when I did when I collected the parallel beam patterns for doing the calibration. Okay, I did this. I did a take series. Okay. The other thing that this is useful for, and actually I'll do this once we collect the data, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But let's go back to video on, and we'll select acquire mode, and we'll go ahead and click take to take and save our final data. Okay, and there we go. Again, the DPs aren't going to look like this when you actually export them later. Okay, so this is a digital adjustment in the MPAD software. This is not what they look like when you actually export them. So it's another video I plan on doing. Okay. One thing I don't like about this is there's no drift correction, though, right? So that you can't, this is unfortunate, right? At this scale, probably not an issue, but you can kind of imagine, right, at higher magnification, this could potentially be a problem. But there's no way to drift correct here. So, all right, so I'm going to call this gold palladium replica grading. And that's going to make a subfolder inside of this folder here with the data in it. Okay. And that's going to be a fairly large data set. I believe that's going to be about 2.2 gigabytes, if I'm not mistaken. A full data set at 512 by 512 resolution is about 17 gigabytes, just to give you an idea. Okay, so with the take series, so I mentioned, right, I did this with the parallel beam diffraction patterns. The other thing you can do with this, which is very useful, let me go back to, so I stored a stage position that is just vacuum. So I'm going to go to that and do video on. Okay, so you can see this is just vacuum now. Okay, so what you can do is, this is now the probe in vacuum. Okay, so if you do a series of these, okay, so do a take series of 1,000. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Okay, and then name for the acquisition. So I'm going to call this probe in vacuum. Okay, and so this has the same, let me blank the beam here. MPAD projects, YouTube tutorial. Okay, so if I open these up, so this .raw, this is the 4D-STEM dataset, and in this probe and vacuum, this .raw, this is the series acquisition. So this is useful now. So if I import this into ImageJ, I can actually use this to calculate the incident probe intensity. Okay, by importing this and then doing an average of these 1,000 images. Okay, and then I get the if I sum up each pixel in the DP from that average, I end up with the total probe intensity. Okay, so the reason that's useful is I can use that to very quickly calculate what are called quantitative STEM images. So a quantitative STEM image is one where the intensity is plotted as a fraction of the incident probe intensity, or the signal, if you will, right? It's not just arbitrary counts, it's a fraction of the probe intensity, which obviously can never exceed 1. Okay, but this is an easy way to actually calculate that incident probe intensity, and then you can do quantitative STEM image calculations very easily. Okay, so with that being said, we covered now the take series, the flipping of the DP, and that should be everything now with this. So this went a little bit more smoothly this time. Okay, so when we're done with the MPAD, I'm going to go ahead and retract it, obviously. And we're going to go ahead and click power on to turn off the power. And then we're going to click exit. Okay. And so what I'm going to do is I am actually, I'm going to use this data here, or maybe some other data to actually discuss, some basic manipulation of the MPAD data. So sorry for the repeat here. I wanted to make sure I was, doing things a little more correctly. And I'll see you guys and girls on the next video.